Hey there. So I last did one of these a little more than a year ago now, and I feel like it's time to do one again. So we're gonna go through a big stack of every single book I currently have out of the library, and what I think of them based on having read, like, parts. No particular order. Life of Adventure and Delight by Akhil Sharma. I got this one out of the library because I went to go see David Sedaris at a live show. It was amazing. He signed my journal because I couldn't buy any of the, books there. But he had this guy come out first. He really suggested him, so I put it on my list right away. And I've gotten through, the first short story. And it's just sort of short stories about life in India. I like getting new perspectives. And it's well written. Definitely agreed. The Golden House by Salman Rushdie. Haven't really started it yet. Cover looks nice. The actual one, Issy Suttie. I had an assignment to read a memoir by a non-celebrity for my writing class, and I picked this one by going through the section of the library that's all biographies, and just picking up the ones that were autobiographies that looked interesting so I could read the first few pages. Seems fine. I wanted something that wasn't too depressing, because a lot of them I picked up were pretty depressing. I don't know. Seems fine. Dreaming in Chinese, Mandarin, Lessons in Life, Love and Language. I really enjoy it, actually. I'm still learning about Chinese more than I'm actually learning the language because I'm a lazy crap. But this is really fascinating and interesting, and I would like to finish it. Let's see, where are we going to go next? Alright, next. Crafting Handmade Shoes. Great looking shoes, sandals, and slippers. I got the idea that I could do that someday. And I will. Someday. Alright, where are we doing next? Okay. On Looking, 11 Walks with Expert Eyes. This one came up because I saw the author mentioned on the internet. The context for these things, I'll always, put it on my hold list and then actually check it out, months later. But so far, she just walks around her city block, New York City block, and, the first chapter is just her walking around, and she's, a science writer. So she's being all, observant, and then she, goes with her little kid, a little toddler, and just sort of, notices what it is that he notices, which is, shapes, and he does things really slowly, and then next one she'll go with it was a geologist who pointed out all the kinds of rocks, and it goes through a bunch of those sorts of different 11 of them. Really enjoy it, plan on finishing that eventually. Salt, A World History. I enjoyed this. I finished a book on cheese, and I was like, ooh, food history's fun. And it is. I've only gotten that far in it, but I've already learned so much about the history of salt. We're up to 279 BC, so that's a long history. It is a very delicious rock. Yes. Alright. More food history. The Food of a Younger Land. So basically back when the government, it was Depression times, New Deal, and they hired a bunch of writers just to give them jobs, and so they collected a bunch of recipes and stories about food, and they were gonna put them together in a regional book, and it just got put together right as the funding ran out and World War II started, so they didn't need it anymore. But it's pretty fascinating so far, just because it's a collection of a bunch of kind of amateur writers, so it's very real in a way. I would like to get through this, actually. American history is fascinating. Okay. trying to figure out what order to go in from here. Let's go through a few that I haven't really read yet. The Drama of the Gifted Child, The Search for the True Self. I don't know if I really want to read this. I think it would drive me nuts. But I checked it out because it was mentioned... Well, the author was mentioned in another book that I had to read for my writing class last term. Well, it was just an excerpt, but I ended up checking out the book and reading the whole thing because it was by Susan Griffin. Which is like, she's like this really hard, she's like old school feminists. So I read her book, gosh, I can't remember what it was called now. But anyways, she also wrote this one, Women in Nature. It's supposed to be very feminist social ecology, and it sounds fascinating. She mentioned this. I want to get through it. You see this stack. Native Tongue, Suzette Hayden Elgin. I haven't finished this, but I really want to. You know of my interest in conlangs, made-up languages, and do you know that? Anyways, she, made up a language that was, a women's language, and it never really caught on. She wrote some science fiction novels about it. I've been getting through it, and it's from 60-something, 84. Alright, this one's from 84, and it's interesting world building if you're really into linguistics. Native Tongues. Definitely do check it out if the idea of feminist linguistics sci-fi from the 80s makes you want to know anything more about that. I don't want to spoil it. The feminist... Need a tripod someday. The Feminist Utopia Project. Bunch of just short stories that are like... Build your own feminist utopia. Write a short story about it. And there's 57 visions of a wildly better future. I've really loved it. It's very... it's got, pictures. It's got different sorts of writing all throughout it. It's got this little rocket ship in the corner that takes off. Definitely interesting. I'd like to go through it and then, look up more writing from some of the other authors mentioned. It seems like a great source to, find more stuff to read later. Not that I need that. This Chair Rocks, a manifesto against ageism. I'm turning 25 next month. I feel old. This was suggested by the Philosophy Tube guy. I'd like to read it. Preface, the writing voice is very good, so I am curious. Alright. The Gender Knot, Unraveling Our Patriarchal Legacy, by Alan G. Johnson. It comes highly suggested. I wanted to see what a man could possibly have to say worthwhile on the subject of patriarchy. But no, it actually seems pretty good, and, sensible. There was one of these, we read, an excerpt out from my sociology class. So, I will definitely have to read this more closely, but I'm curious. Okay. Alright. Esperanto and its Rivals. This is my shit. This goes through, basically, the history of people who make up conlang, specifically with the idea of forming an interlingua, and it goes through, the history of, the invention of Esperanto, and, just sort of, the groups that took it up, and, how, it was all very divided. There was your, pacifists who were really into it. There were people who were into it just for, the science thing, and it's pretty fascinating stuff, actually. And like, just look at this cover. It's beautiful. Esperanto and its rivals. The struggle for an international language. Oh boy. Okay. Let me get a couple of the ones that I haven't read nearly enough of out of the way. The long and disturbing story of corporations outsourcing and catastrophe, Out of Sight. Global warming, how it got to be this bad. It's I've just punched through a little bit, like, you know, skimming, and it looks pretty good. I like the writing voice in it a lot. Manages to take a depressing subject and make it feel more like not so numbersy and more personal. Definitely worth looking into. Witness to the Revolution. Radicals, resistors, vets, hippies, and the year America lost its mind and found its soul. About 1970. I wanted to check it out because I wanted to sort of be able to compare, like, what we're going through now with a lot of, like, upset and weirdness and, like, oh boy, what's gonna happen, to, like, the other times that's happened throughout recent history. Haven't gotten to really touch it yet, mostly because it's a big book and I do most of my reading on the bus on the way to work, and I don't want to bring a big book with me because I'm afraid I'm going to ruin it. But I mean, you know, it looks good. Okay. Venomous, How Earth's Deadliest Creatures Mastered Biochemistry. I don't remember why I picked this one. Looks cool. We'll find out. I do like a good science writing. We'll find out. Okay. Alright, now we're getting into a couple of my favorites. So here is... Well, alright, here... Just to mention that I had it. If you've noticed, this is like all non-fiction, except for like a couple of things right at the bottom. That's what I'm into these days. But this is a graphic novel of an Octavia E. Butler's book, which is apparently about like vampires. I've been wanting to read more Octavia Butler stuff, because apparently it's really great, and I need to. And this is a graphic novel, which I can generally, like, really speed through one. We'll figure it out. I don't know. I'm curious. I just got this one last week, so... This one I don't even feel bad about having not really finished yet. I'll show you this whole stack when I'm done if it doesn't kill me. Alright. There Will Be No Miracles Here by Casey Gerald. This book... I picked it up, and, just because, like, look at this cover. There will be no miracles here. I'm curious. So I picked it up, and I started reading, and I got all the way to page 6 in, like, the foreword, and I was just standing there in the library, and I was like, oh, crap. I gotta check this out. I gotta finish this. And I read this. It's a story of Casey Gerald, who was the son of, like, a short-time, fairly well-known football player, and then he himself, you know, just sort of had that sort of a crazy upbringing, you know, and then, made it through, and... through his football, like, got asked to play football at Yale, and then used the and it just, like, led him into what he describes as, like, a completely different sort of life than how he had grown up, and just sort of, like, his experiences, but it's just, like, the writing voice is really good. He has some TED Talks, so I read this, and I took 2 breaks, and the first one was I read the little backet. He grew up in Oak Cliff, Texas, went to Yale, where he majored in political science and played varsity football. Then he got a business school degree, and he's been featured at TED they mentioned that he did a TED Talk. So I went and I looked up one of those to sort of just get a feel for his speaking voice, which will sort of help me like read and like understand their voice. And then I slept. And outside of that, I like finished that book in 2 sittings. I like checked it out of the library at 7 p.m., stayed up until 2 a.m., woke up the next day and like finished it. It's fascinating stuff. It's like very, like looking back and like not telling it, not like bringing you along for the ride like it's a narrative journey, but more like, and that's how that screwed me up, and it's very, I liked it. It's what I would decide to actually do for my memoir project if I hadn't decided recently that, I don't know, I might just not do that anymore. I'm probably gonna stop going after this term just because, like, I like it, but I'm not quite focused enough for it yet to actually get anything good out of it outside of feeling guilty about the time that I spend outside of work because I'm not doing homework, but I'm also not gonna do it, so it'll always be there. But, like, I should probably at least try. It'll be letting the teacher down if I don't at least try to, like, finish the term in a reasonable way. But I also spent all of yesterday in bed watching cartoons instead of going to class. So I just can't handle a year of it. Okay. The thing I'm gonna miss most is access to the college library if I drop out, honestly. I'd say, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, 5 of these out of this stack are out of their library right now. Obviously, this isn't every book I've read over the past year. Things have been cycling through, but it is definitely a whole new stack than last time. Okay. This one, I also got out just the other day and started. 23112. Had read another one of these authors' other books, which is also a year. And so I want to say it was like 2037, but I'm not sure. Could have been 21 something. It doesn't say. Apparently this one's older, and I can't look it up. I'll just get distracted. So, but it's science fiction. Years 23112, scientific and technological advances have opened gateways to an extraordinary future. And it starts out with this, like, Swan character, like, grieving for the death of someone who is, like, only just under 200. And she, like, lives on Mercury, on this city that, like, travels around the planet slowly, staying out of the very bright sunlight where it will burn you and you'll die. And there's, like, space travel, and like, humans are starting to, like, form into different species based on the fact that, like, they spend their time in around different planets, or, like, living in asteroids or whatever. I picked this up last night, and just sort of, you know, made it almost 100 pages in, you know. I'm really enjoying it. I like this author, Kim Stanley Robinson. I might check out some of his other stuff someday, since I do like sci-fi with, like, really good fake science. He has a Mars trilogy and some sequels to it. I don't know. But, like, that's like a dozen books. It's gonna take me a lifetime to get through all of them. So, but this one, definitely worth checking out. Alright, and then the last two, the ones that I've really enjoyed, were, I'm going to start with, From the Folks Who Brought You the Weekend, a short illustrated history of labor in the United States. I love this. I freaking love this. It's really fascinating to learn about, like, how the, like, labor struggle actually was going on during, like revolution times and during the Civil War, and just learning about, you know, sort of the problems that people have had, but also the fact that people have been fighting, and, like, how there, like, used to be a Socialist Party USA, and how there used to be, like, all of these, like, unions and strikes and all of this stuff that I've never heard anything about. It's good. It's a really numbery. I don't have a great brain for dates, so, like, I sort of need, like, a timeline along the side to, like, keep everything straight. And it'll go through and be like, 9,000 people did it this year, and then 10,000 this time, and I'm like, you've lost me. But, it's also got, sort of, like, once a chapter. The illustrated history is not so much. There it is. These short little comics, that always go on for just a couple pages, like every chapter. It's amazing. People should know their history, their labor history. So, definitely worth checking out if you're curious. And, okay, one more. This one isn't from a library, it's borrowed from a friend. Tom Robbins, Another Roadside Attraction. I don't know. I know some weird hippies who really love this guy, and I gotta check it out someday. Look at that picture. I don't know. I'll figure it out. I borrowed it from her on the understanding that, like, it's gonna take me a year to finish this. And she was like, that's fine. So, we're good. And last one. I've mentioned her. It's just called Marie Ecke, Radical Politics and Outlaw Passions. I love this woman. She, you know, she's a person who was born on the East Coast, moved out to Oregon with a lady friend to do some homesteading for a few years, and then, like, became one of the first, not like the first, but, like, among the first class of women allowed to be physicians in the state of Oregon, where she, like, moved to Portland and, like, did a bunch of work for, she, like, had a main practice, but then if there was, like, labor struggles and stuff like that, she would, like, treat those people for free. She was an abortion doctor during times when that was very illegal, so, you know, a good, I don't know, a role model for us today. She talks, it's like, it's always mentioned that she's just a very angry, like, out there sort of a person. I haven't finished it, but I've gotten to about this far in it, where she is arrested and in jail for a year plus over basically being too against World War I and pointing out, like, this is just gonna be a bunch of capitalists making money off of everyone's death. And they were like, that's treasonous. And she was like, fuck yourselves. I never said that. So, I love it. I want to know a lot more about her. And I'm really close to the end, and I almost don't want to finish it, because then it'll be over, and I won't be able to, like, accidentally run into her someday, because she's still around. Would suggest, though. Okay. Oh, alright. That's your content for the day. Here's a big fucking stack of books. Yeah. I'm gonna chill out and put a dent in one of these. It's been a crazy week. I don't know. You like my jumpsuit? I made it myself. It's pretty terrible because it's the first try at doing this, but also it's pretty great because it's so green and ugly and no one else has one. Okay. Hope you all are having great days. Night.